So, the big ongoing economic crunch designed to lower our standards of living continues further. This article is from dublinlive.ie. Fears of fuel limit and work from home rule amid severe shortage warning. Irish drivers are being warned that potential limits on fuel per person could come into effect this winter. Each driver could be capped at 15 to 20 litres per visit to filling stations in order to avoid mass shortages. The government are drawing up plans to help cope with the fuel crisis, which they are responsible for creating by placing sanctions on Russia, which the people did not ask them to do. Sorry, I've lost the run of that sentence there. The government are drawing up plans to help cope with the fuel crisis should a worst-case scenario arise in the coming months. Plans are also being put in place to ensure essential industries remain operating and healthcare settings remain heated. As I said before, the policy of classifying people into essential and non-essential workers, along with essential and non-essential travel, for example, in order to ration fuel, is going to result in serious restrictions on people's movement, creating an outcome that is tantamount to a lockdown by another name. Some people will be allowed to buy more petrol and diesel for their cars than others if the government determines that their work or businesses are essential to the economy. The public were conditioned into this kind of thinking during COVID lockdowns, where police checkpoints on motorways were a common occurrence in order to prevent people from travelling too far outside of their 2 or 5 kilometre permitted travel range. Of course, this also plays into the World Economic Forum's agenda to curb private car ownership. Fuels for Ireland CEO Kevin McPartland spoke to Pat Kenny's show on News Talk yesterday and said the plans are a fire drill in case we are faced with the worst case scenario. I said to somebody the other day, I've been in hundreds of fire drills, but I've never been in a burning building, he said. This is a drill. This work is to make sure we know what to do if the worst were to happen. We don't expect it to. Mr. McPartland said anyone not deemed an essential worker would only be able to purchase small amounts of fuel. It isn't just the doctors and nurses, and it is not just the official vehicles, he said. It is about saying that if you're responsible for managing, for example, the electricity network, you need to be able to get to and from your place of work, and there would be dedicated service stations exclusively for that use. But if we were in a situation where there are heavy restrictions, normal motorists might be limited to 15 litres or 20 litres of fuel. Of course, none of this will apply to the politicians who will be placing these kind of restrictions on the public. Now, of course, also, none of these fuel hikes needed to happen, considering the only reason the sanctions on Russia were introduced was to impact upon our quality of living. Phony wars, phony crises, creating opportunities to radically alter our society and way of life. It's funny how the sanctions on Putin feel more like sanctions on us. A work-from-home order could also be reinstated by the government in the case of an emergency situation if you are considered a non-essential worker, according to McPartland. And here was me thinking that lockdowns were over. Sorry, this isn't a lockdown. It's definitely not a lockdown, though, you know. We wouldn't keep doing what we are doing, so the plan is how you prioritize. How you make sure that ambulances stay on the road alongside fire vehicles and Garda vehicles, and how you get food to the supermarket. There are tiers of users, and depending on the perceived threat to the security of supply, the response would be different. So it could be that only those absolutely essential can have access to fuel in a catastrophic situation. Work from home order. Essential users having access to fuel in a catastrophic situation. Terms like non-essential worker. This all sounds very familiar to me. You know, it sure is convenient that major restrictions on people's ability to travel also just happen to tie neatly into the plans of Agenda 2030. If people aren't allowed to fill their cars in order to travel across the country, how are they going to be permitted to travel internationally on a plane? Well, of course, we know that they won't be in the future, because international air travel is to be made a luxury of the past for the proles. They don't want us travelling in planes around the world. Now, let's juxtapose this story of fuel shortages with this story, an article from the BBC. BP sees biggest profit in 14 years as energy bills soar. Well, the little guy might be suffering and struggling to heat his home and fill his car with petrol or diesel, but at least a multi-billion-dollar energy company is making extraordinary profits. BP has reported its biggest quarterly profit for 14 years after oil and gas prices soared. The energy giant saw underlying profits hit $8.45 billion between April and June, more than triple the amount it made in the same period last year. It comes as typical household energy bills have been forecast to hit more than £3,600 a year this winter. The bumper profits have prompted calls for the government to tax firms further to help families with rising bills. BP's profits were the second highest for the second quarter in the firm's history. Well, good for them. I guess this entirely contrived Ukrainian war narrative was beneficial for their bottom line. The article continues later. What's driving up profits? Boy, I wonder. The huge increase in profits for firms has been fueled by higher prices for oil and gas, which have risen sharply due to the war in Ukraine. Not due to the war in Ukraine, but due to the sanctions placed on Russia, which we did not ask for, which our politicians placed on Russia without our consent, without consulting us. In recent months, Russia has reduced supplies to Europe following the invasion, and fears are growing it may switch off the taps altogether. The potential of gas supply problems has led to the wholesale price soaring, which has led to energy firms passing those costs onto customers, pushing up household energy bills by unprecedented amounts. Higher oil prices have also led to the price of petrol and diesel reaching record highs at the pumps in recent months, although prices have started to fall slightly. Now, for this second part of this video, I want to shift gears completely and address something that I've been thinking a great deal about. I am conscious of producing content that is too doom and gloom by focusing on the seeming inevitability of what the globalists and our local enforcer governments have planned for us. There's more articles these days doing the rounds about how we're going to be eating insects in the future, and we know there's going to be a big push to eliminate cash. They want to introduce individual carbon scores and social credit and all that sort of stuff. So though we know where the cabal wants to take humanity with Agenda 2030 and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the tricky thing is figuring out when each step of their agenda will slot into place over the next few years. Because time frames are not easy to predict. We aren't privy to their schedule. So it can be all too easy to worry about all the dystopian madness all at once, which of course can be overwhelming for a person. I'm reminded of that scene from the movie Passengers, where the android Arthur tells Jim to take a break from worrying about what he can't control. He tells him to live a little, which I think is very good advice. Anything can happen this winter or throughout 2023 or over the next few years, bad or indeed good. Things may get a lot better. So we can't allow our lives to be governed by fear in the present. At some point, you should try to take a break from worrying about the possible worst-case scenario future and live a little in the present. Things are going to probably get very difficult. Energy rationing is possibly on the table, as we've talked about. Also possible blackouts, food shortages, you name it. Hopefully it won't be as bad as we feared it might be. It's true also that our governments have sort of robbed certainty and stability from our lives. We can be anxious about making plans because they can just pass legislation in the morning under some bogus crisis which suspends our rights and freedoms if they so wish. However, despite all of these challenges, we have to seize whatever opportunities we have available to us each day. We must try to enjoy our lives to the best of our ability. We have no idea how long we have on this planet, what possible twists and turns lie ahead. Some of them could be huge wins for us. And we also cannot simply slavishly accept the premise that there are people in this world who consider themselves to be elites, who wish to exert total control over our lives and that there's nothing we can do about it. If we adopt such a mindset, then we will be helping them build the prison world they want for us. By all means, build your own small communities, prepare for a future where you can be as independent of the system and as self-sufficient as possible, and make sure that you're at least aware of what they have planned for us. But never let any of this New World Order crap infringe upon your right to enjoy your life. The cabal have already lost the room when it comes to COVID and even the war narrative. It's all wearing very thin now. A crisis can unify a society into collectivism in the short to medium term, but not over a long haul. And nothing about what the World Economic Forum, the UN, and all the others have in store for humanity will unite or fulfill people for long. They are going to try their best to build a totalitarian population control system, a dystopian digital prison society. But rest assured, it will not last for long. And one thing I've learned over these past couple of years is that there is huge merit in simply refusing to comply, holding your nerve, standing your ground, and waiting out the worst of what is being thrown at you. The best strategy in a no-win scenario is simply not to play. Surviving the New World Order and Agenda 2030 and whatever else you want to call it requires us to get out of the way of it and get ourselves into such a position whereby we will one day be observing its implosion and collapse from the outside. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.